research projects that were conducted by, related to the bar exam that were conducted by the state bar. So I discussed, the first one that I talked about was the recent performance changes on the California bar exam. And that was a study that looked at the historical pattern of the pass rate and changes in applicants to find out whether or not there has been a shift in the characteristics of applicants that might contribute to the explanation of why there has been a decline in bar passage rate. So that study was conducted in 2017. We also had, the next study I described was the standard setting study, which looked at the appropriate pass line or the cut score for the general bar exam. And that happened in 2017 as well. And I think everybody's familiar with the study and the outcome of that study. We also simultaneously conducted the content validation study. And that study examined the overlap between what's measured on the exam and what is critical knowledge required for entry-level attorneys. So that study relied on an attorney analysis that was conducted by the National Conference of Bar Examiners in 2008. That was statewide. The last study that I want to talk about that was released this past year in December of 2018 was a study that looked at the California bar performance combined with law student credentials in an effort to find more explanatory factors that might be contributing to the decline in bar passage rate. And that study, again, was released in December 2018 and really explained, the study summarized that about 20 to 50% of that decline could be contributed to these characteristics, but there were still outstanding explanatory factors that speak to that might speak to the decline in bar passage rate. So, in an effort to, all of these studies have raised other questions, and in an effort to appropriately address those, the state bar is now embarking on a job analysis study that is going to be California-based. The National Conference of Bar Examiners also conducting a job analysis simultaneously. We're in coordination to ensure that we don't oversaturate attorneys in California and that we gather the information that we need. So the significance of this study is that it's going to help us synthesize the body of knowledge that we know on attorney practice and build on what's been collected with these other studies. So today, you're going to hear from the deans who have been participating in CAPA through this working group. And they're going to explain what this research body attempts to address. And for many of you, the questions that have come up are possibly what's going to happen with the cut score, how can the state bar modify or the exam to better reflect what newly admitted attorneys need to know, and what can we change about the bar exam to ensure that it's testing what it should. And so this is a study that attempts to do that. But as you'll see throughout the process, that it will take some time and it's going to take some resources. And we've already embarked on that. So as I mentioned, I don't want to keep you from hearing from Dean Jackie Gardina, and we also have Dean Ferrulo on the phone, to hear about their participation in this project. It's right here. And about this important piece of research. So thank you.
So thank you, everyone. And Dean Ferrulo is on the phone as well, and so I'll invite him to comment as I move through. But I thought what I would do at this time to set the stage for a discussion or comment or feedback is to just say what it is we're trying to do, how we're doing it, and then what the timeline is for completion. So Amy already set out what the California Practice Analysis Study is set up to do. And as you can see, it's funded by a grant from Access Lex Institute. And it's going to collect data on what knowledge and skills new attorneys need when entering California practice. So job analysis studies are best practices anytime there's a licensure exam. But California, and I don't think any state, has actually performed a state-specific job analysis as it relates to bar exams. So California will be the first state to do so. The NCBE did it in 2012, and if you remember, we then received a changed MBE exam in 2015 with the addition of civil procedure. Based on that job analysis study that they did. So this is the first time that California has done one. And so the intent is to establish the knowledge and skills a new attorney needs when entering California practice. So what this study can help do is it informs changes to the exam. So we might learn something that changes the content of the exam. We might learn something that changes the format of the exam. We might learn something that changes how the exam is weighted. It can also inform law school curriculum in terms of what we now know about what our graduates need to know and be able to do when they first enter California practice. But what it won't tell us is what's the appropriate cut score. There's going to be no quick resolution to this question through this particular working group or this particular process. It's also not going to tell us how to best test certain skills. So even if the job analysis comes up with a particular skill set that is necessary for new attorneys in California, it's not going to tell us how to test that. So it's going to give us some really important and helpful information, but it's not going to solve some of the bigger questions about the cut score that are percolating in California. And so, Stephen, I don't know if you want to add anything to the what it is we're doing.
No, I think that's good so far. I'll keep going.
Okay. And so CAPA is a working group that's made up of practicing attorneys across a wide range of practice areas, as well as time and experience in practice. And it also has law school,
sociology departments, and psychology departments. What we're going to be speaking about today, here's the brief outline. In case you missed it in April 2017, we'll be talking about some of the psychological friction that law students experience both in law school and also when preparing for the bar exam. And this is the friction that our program was designed to address. We're also going to be speaking about surveys and focus groups that we conducted in the LA area in 2017 with California bar exam takers. And we'll talk about the design and the evaluation of the psychological intervention that we created, the California Bar Strategies and Stories program. And we'll end with some of the additional predictors of bar passage that we found when doing our study.
All right, so I'm going to cover a little bit about the psychological friction and what psychological friction even is, because you'll see how this was adapted in the design and evaluation of our intervention. So what we know from research is that students experience significant psychological friction both in the law school experience and in their journey to taking the bar exam. Now, the way that psychological friction can show up is in several different paths. So feeling that one doesn't belong, either academically, culturally, or socially, experiencing doubts about one's potential, having maladaptive theories of stress, which we will get into in a moment, and endorsing fixed mindset beliefs about one's ability, that you either have it or you don't, and there's not much you can do to change one's level of ability, versus having a growth mindset of ability, which is the idea that I can learn, expand, and develop my ability and talent over time through approaching the right strategies, seeking help, and persisting. So what we did for the initial surveys and focus groups, we partnered with the State Bar of California in 2017, and we initially gathered data regarding students' experiences of psychological friction when preparing for the bar exam. And this was supposed to be used to design and evaluate an intervention with the 2018 cohort who would sit for the bar exam in July 2018. And that intervention was aimed to alleviate friction, psychological friction, tamping down stress, and freeing up executive resources in order to perform at one's potential. So what we did was that in June 2017, we designed a survey and we sent it to recent law school graduates as they're preparing to sit for the bar in July 2017. So this is in the moment of them studying and preparing. And we surveyed them about their experience to understand test takers, first, their mindset beliefs about bar exam performance and these other areas of psychological friction, whether they were engaged in adaptive or maladaptive study behaviors, and how they felt around self-efficacy and competence to pass the bar. One of the most overwhelming findings that we discovered in those surveys was the best predictor of positive outcomes for students in that cohort as they were studying was having a growth mindset belief about the bar exam. Now this is sort of a little bit whited out here. It's hard to read, but an example item of this is agreeing with the item, your test-taking ability is something that you can change substantially. So it's this belief that you can actually develop and expand your ability to take these high-stakes tests. Now, growth mindset beliefs about the bar exam was related positively to all the psychological experiences you'd want students to have as they're preparing for the bar exam. So for example, greater beliefs that they have potential to succeed on the bar, capable of meeting the demands of the bar, capable of handling the stress while they are studying, and engaging in positive emotion regulation techniques that we know to be useful to engage in encoding and retrieval of information. We also found that endorsing these growth mindset beliefs about the bar exam also resulted in lower negative outcomes. So this is also a positive thing. Lower levels of pluralistic ignorance, thinking I'm the only one struggling in this moment as I'm studying. Lower levels of stress, lower scores on a depression inventory, and lower scores on loneliness surveys. We also found that these growth mindset beliefs result in greater self-efficacy and confidence about passing the bar. And in case you think these growth mindset beliefs are just sort of rainbows and sunshine and cause people to take their foot off of the gas as they are studying in this moment before the exam, we actually find that it didn't change their studying behavior in terms of the time spent studying for the bar. Both fixed and growth mindseted students reported equal amounts of time studying. It's just that students had these other positive psychological benefits while studying when they endorsed the growth mindset belief. It also didn't change students' importance of doing well on the bar or how demanding they thought the bar was. So it didn't sort of create this rose-colored glasses. Instead, it just sort of gave them the psychological tools to be able to engage productively in their studying while they were sitting for the bar. We conducted then focus groups building off of what we learned in those surveys in December of 2017. And the results of those focus groups were threefold. We found 3 areas that just kept coming up over and over again in these focus groups. These focus groups were actually conducted in the LA area among many schools here in the area. And those students reported 3 areas of psychological friction. First, many endorsed these limiting mindset beliefs and had maladaptive behavior that resulted from those mindsets. I'm going to cover each one of these in a little more detail. Stress also was another area of psychological friction, and the stress came from a lot of things, of course, fear of failure, time constraints, amount of information, and negative feedback when they were studying as they took the practice exams and were disappointed with their scores. But we also started to hear this sort of recursive negative process of students actually stressing about the stress. I started to notice that my heart rate was being raised every time I sat down to study. My palms were sweaty. I couldn't actually concentrate. I found myself having to reread everything that I was reading. So stressing about that stress was actually undermining the efficacy of their studying behavior. And finally, the third area of psychological friction was flagging motivation, particularly in the weeks leading up to the bar exam.